Southfield regular meeting of the Planning Commission, January 29th, 2025. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Bernuti,
Present.
Commissioner Griffiths,
Here.
Commissioner Gruber,
Present.
Commissioner Martin,
Present.
Commissioner Willis.
Here.
Commissioners Goodwin Dye and Dr. Stevens Gunn are excused, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Through the chair,
Yeah.
I move to approve the agenda dated January 29, 2025.
Second it.
Got a favorable motion on the agenda by Commissioner Willis, second by Commissioner Bernuti. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the agenda proceeds as written. First item is, two items at 22106 and 22108 West 8 Mile Road.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. That is the Eagle Landscaping item that was before you in December. They have asked for a postponement to a date uncertain to complete their stormwater design. I did speak to their architect earlier this week, and they expect to be presenting something to the city engineer next week. And once they get the feedback from the city engineer and make any necessary changes, and the city engineer says that it's a viable solution that could be approved, then we'll schedule them to come back before this body.
Okay.
Point of order,
Sure.
basically a question. When they were here before us, we adjourned the hearing for a period of 30 days to continue the decision that we had already made with them. Does this, first an adjournment for 30 days and then an adjournment without date, does that kind of break the continuity of that hearing? Does it?
We will do notices again, because when the dates that were in the original notices, we had a date certain. We don't have a date now. So when they do come back, if it's say March, we will mail notices again and put it in the agenda in the paper again.
And so upon return in March, we will then have a full hearing.
Yeah, the question is, like, the public hearing was held. Technically, you don't have to hold the public hearing in because it's the same item. But we will do the notices again so the public understands that that 30-day postponement did not lead to an action and that there will be another meeting at which it'll be heard. So that's one of those ones where typically you don't do the public hearing again unless, like, say if they withdrew it and came back a year later, yeah, we'd start over. But it's still more or less the same project. That's when if the chair feels that people show up and they want to talk and you want to open it for public comment because of the extraordinary nature, you could do so.
During that item.
During that item.
Yeah.
But you're not obligated to hold another public hearing, but you could take public comment if you deem it, if the chair deems it appropriate. And it may be, if for some reason we have a number of people turn out who want to speak on that item and it's been ongoing for this long, I would, if I were chairman, probably would make the effort to have the public be heard on the item before you vote on it.
Okay. Or if there's a substantial design change.
Yeah,
Other
but you wouldn't
than
say you were
just-
opening a public hearing, you would say you will take additional public comment
Okay.
at that time.
I think that sounds good.
Thank you.
We do need a motion and support for that postponement, though.
And then we have to do each item, correct? In order, the
Probably would be best.
rezoning and then special use. Okay.
My question would be, right now, both items state public hearing,
Yep.
but there would only be public comment if necessary.
Yeah, the public hearing was actually, I looked back at the minutes, the public hearing was actually held on both items.
Okay, so, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna vote to postpone these.
Oh, we're going to vote to postpone. Okay.
You're postponing
That's what I
action.
was okay.
Okay, I just trying to clarify for my own.
Yep. Yeah, I did, because I knew we held the public hearing on the rezoning. I had to double check that we also held it on the special land use, but I went back and looked through the minutes and the recording. We did actually open and close the public hearing on both items. So that was held.
So if there's no additional discussion or comments, we're gonna look for a motion to postpone to no date certain on each of these items in order, two separate motions.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. So we got a favorable motion on the first item, PZR 24-0013 by Commissioner Bernuti,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Willis, of postponing to no date certain. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the first item is postponed to no date certain. Same action on the second item here, which is PSLU 24-0021. Looking for another motion on that one.
To the motion, so motion.
So moved.
Okay, a favorable motion to postpone to no date certain by Commissioner Martin,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Willis. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that item is also postponed to no date certain while they figure out their engineering. All right, next item, the 2024 Planning Commission Annual Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we discussed at the earlier meeting when we presented the kind of initial run on this, this is the annual report required from the Planning Enabling Act that the Planning Commission makes regarding the activities of itself and the Planning Department to the legislative body on an annual basis. As noted here on the first slide, it just lists the particular law that requires that annual report. So it's just reminding people, like, why do we do this? It's a requirement of the law. It's also good practice. So we're just going to go over kind of a broad slate of what we do and what we've done this year. As we know, the Planning Commission, this is the body as it sits now with its current officers. And then the staff, one of the things that came up in the last discussion was that not everybody do what everybody did on the staff, so I actually added a little detail to this. We've got City Planner, Planning Director Crow, myself as the Deputy City Planner. I do mostly non-administrative reviews, which are things that go to City Council or Planning Commission. And then I also do a lot of Planning Commission, City Council support meeting prep for the City Planner. Sarah Mullally, you see her at the CIP meeting. She helps run the CIP. That's her main job is dealing with administrative reviews of site plans. She's our lead person on that, and she provides support to the Zoning Board of Appeals. She writes the staff reports for commercial requests, and she also organizes and manages the Capital Improvement Program project, which is, it's a lot. And she's the one who preps the document and gives that real professional look at the end and organizes it, and organizes all the departments to get their information in. Suzanne Youssef, our sustainability planner. You probably remember her name is Suzanne Hanna. She got married this year, so new name. She's working on our sustainability action plan and works on our sustainability activities kind of across the board. She also works on our tree removal permitting and wetland permitting and anything kind of more environmentally related. I assist her with those because of my landscape architecture background. And then we have Alex, our assistant city planner, who helps with the prep of this body, helps with City Center Advisory Board, Southfield Public Arts Commission, grant writing. Alex kind of does like whatever needs doing. He's on anything that needs getting done. And works also on the non-administrative reviews with me. And then we have Lisa in our office. She's the administrative assistant. She handles the payroll. So everybody, your quarterly payments, our payroll, handling accounts payable, purchase orders, all of that administrative work pretty much. That's the planning department in a nutshell. So we're a small organization. We do a lot of stuff, though. We deal with, actually, if you count this body and the City Council and the City Center Advisory Board and the Arts Commission and the Zoning Board and the Sustainability Advisory Board, we deal with 6 different boards regularly. And then we also deal with the subcommittees of council and sometimes the Wildlife Commission and other bodies as well. So we're a pretty busy group. Now we're looking at 2024's activities. We had 29 Planning Commission meetings last year. There were 12 study meetings, 13 regular meetings, 3 long-range study meetings, and the 1 joint visioning session with City Council in July. We did 8 City Center Advisory Board meetings, 10 Public Arts Commission meetings, 4 Sustainability Advisory Board meetings, and 14 Zoning Board of Appeal meetings. All those meetings have a lot of prep that go into them, so we like to list I don't think there's any other department that deals with that many bodies and preparing that many meetings in the city, honestly. Looking at our land use projects, just kind of a summary here. 9 standard rezonings, 3 conditional rezonings, and 6 of the ODD, RUDD, mixed-use corridor district rezonings, 26 special land uses, 23 site plan reviews, 6 zoning amendments, and 97 administrative site plans. So that's, we're looking at the proposed value of development. This year it's 180 million. Last year was about 78 million. The previous year, 300 million, but that one's kind of an outlier because 250 million of that was just the Middle Point development across the street. And then 2021 was 174 million. And as Mr. Martin had asked, we added the administrative review amounts there so they would know, that's, of that 180 million, almost 24 million of that is stuff we're reviewing administratively small projects, small site improvements, smaller scale items. And that, both the number of administrative site plans and that value will likely increase next year because, we delegated more things to administrative review mid-year when we adopted that change to site plan review in July. Became effective in August. Just going over the zoning amendments we did. First one and biggest one that's been in the works for quite some time was delegating site plan review to this body and more to the city planner for administrative. That was a requirement for our redevelopment ready certification with the state. One of the kind of items that was still holding us up, which I will say we've actually gotten the green light that our recertification for redevelopment ready has been tentatively approved. They haven't made the official announcement or anything, but like our person at MEDC that manages our account said that as far as she's concerned, we've completed everything. They're just kind of waiting for final sign-offs in the hierarchy of their organization. Marijuana retailer hours, we expanded the weekend hours from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. to match more or less what was going on in surrounding communities for the 2 retail outlets that we have in town. Security fences, we permitted decorative security fences up to 8 feet tall with the approval of the city planner in cases where they were warranted for uses that required some additional security. Beekeeping and backyard fowl, that one started in October of 23, and we're almost done. It's going back to council in February for the general ordinance amendment and the zoning amendment, and it'd be effective in March. So that one, finally almost done with that one. The drive aisle width and parking lots, that was really just to clean up some inconsistent language and just providing some more flexibility and reducing the minimum requirements so that we weren't requiring more pavement that was really needed. And then the drive-through restaurant standards was just a cleanup. The drive-through restaurants were allowed in 6 different commercial districts, and only 2 of them had these weird special requirements, and even those weren't consistent with each other. So getting rid of those made it the same across all those zoning districts. And then we had some highlights of the projects you guys looked at this year. Obviously, there's the Panda Express on Telegraph on an outlot development. The Culvers, which is another outlot development on Telegraph. That one got its ODD approval last month. Just working on the ODD agreement now. Wellspring Housing Development on Hooper, over there off of Telegraph and Central Park Boulevard, or Civic Center and Boulevard. Berg, rather. That one is, they're still working on the financing on that one because there's a stack of financing required for that project with state incentives, and it's proceeding. It's just there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get that one finally financed and out of the ground. They're still hopeful to commence construction this year, though.
Sorry.
The Tunnel to Towers Veterans Village on Northwestern, former Holiday Inn with suites. That conversion, they've already begun work on that. So that one was approved earlier in the year. The Harpo Townhomes on Bush Street, that rezoning was approved. And we'll be going forward. There should be a site plan coming back to you in the not too distant future on that one for final approvals of the layout. But the rezoning just became effective like the 23rd. Because, the council approves it, then they enact it, then it has to wait 10 days, and then it gets published, then it becomes effective. It's kind of a chain of things that happen. The El Car Wash approval's in place. They're kind of I think they're working through permitting now. I know they're looking to get their bond in for their art. So they're going to be proceeding on that one this year for sure. Drifter vans, they're in operation. They were already operating within their existing site. They've been able to scale up their business, and from my understanding from our business development person, they're doing quite well. Glassman Kia, the project hasn't commenced yet. you know, that's one of those ones of I don't know if they're still in negotiation with Kia over like the final architecture of the building, because I know there was some back and forth on that. I don't think they've applied for any permits yet, but my understanding is they still intend to do the project and it should commence in 2025. The MUC, our first mixed-use corridor district approval on 10 Mile, we met couple of weeks back with a local development group that's now partnered with the property owner and the architect that did the design work. They're going through and kind of pricing things, and I would not be surprised to see that project get rescoped a little bit. If it's a substantial change, it'll have to go back through the process. If it's a minor modification, we might be able to do it administratively, but now that they've actually got like a local, like a Southeast Michigan developer and construction team on board, and they're looking to actually price things and figure out financing, we'll see how that proceeds. But at least we do know that they've brought partners on who are actually looking to build. So that's promising. The Losser Woods Park, dog park, the pathways have gone in. The dog park is going in this year is my understanding. So we should see, and I think the initial parking, the phase 1 parking lot improvements are going in. So we should see that up and running at some point this year. And then a few other items, the capital improvement plan that we organize and handle every year. Sarah handles that. That's, you know, that's kind of a big deal. That feeds right into the budget, helps us plan for longer term capital spending. The LTU summer camp, placemaking through landscape design that we do every year is like an outreach and educational item is planned to occur again this year if we get enough students signed up. 9 Mile Greenway Corridor, the task force has been formed under the Oakland County Parks and Rec. They've got a branding campaign that's pretty much nearing completion now. The Prescott to Plum Howell Trail segment has been installed. The Evergreen to Southfield Road Trail segment has TAP grant funding, but due to some delays in getting like environmental clearances and other clearance and easement clear, like right-of-way clearances, it's likely that won't actually be built this year, or it'll be built next year. Which they do have it like until 2027 to build it, but it's just we don't have enough clearances to go out for the spring bid in March. So they have to bid it in fall and build it in the spring of 2026. So unfortunately, we'd hoped that it'd be under construction this spring, but it looks like because it's federal money, we don't have all the boxes checked to get clearance on that yet. It's not that the TAP grant's been taken back, it's just, you know, there's two biddings that happen with MDOT that occur in the different points of the year, and this is the bidding for the spring, and we're not going to make that based on what we're still waiting for clearances from the feds and MDOT. We do have a TAP grant application in for the section of 9 Mile between Northwestern Highway and Greenfield. We think we have a very strong application there. We have really good information and data supporting it. So we're hoping to get another TAP grant, and then really the only remaining big piece will be that bridge across the mixing bowl of freeways. So we're hopeful if we can get the trail built on either side of it, then the logic behind getting funding to do the bridge becomes, you know, almost undeniably compelling if the funds are available out there for grant monies. We had some placemaking efforts. We got new art installations this year. The Key by LTU, which is the kind of the tall, skinny one there. Brothers, which is the bottom right by the fire station at 9 Mile Beach. Some additional murals. We also started a process of doing a Greenfield Gateway beautification, kind of as an adjunct to the Northland development and as a gateway to the city. So you see at the top right, the Greenfield Gateway signage. There's also banners. Landscaping's now been put around those signs. And there's plans to actually extend that, do additional landscaping, but extend that all the way up. It was from 8 to 9 Mile, but they want to actually, with Oak Park, we want to do it up to 10 Mile at this point. So it's going to be expanded again next year if we can get the funding in place for it. And then we also did some additional bus stop improvements, 13 bus stop enhancements, pavement benches and trash bins. We did some more solar bollards along the city center trail. We put in, I believe, 20 in 23, and then those were working really well, so we did another 10 to make that area a nice lit path. And then we did some community entry signs where you were entering Southfield and there was no indicator you were coming across the border. So up in the top right there are the new Welcome to Southfield signs that were added. We'll be doing some more of those this year, correct, Alex? Yeah. I think we'll have all the entrances pretty well covered after this year. Sustainability highlights, the Sustainability Action Plan, the framework's established, the full draft is nearing preparation. We have engaged a public engagement consultant who's going to work with taking the draft of the plan out and getting public feedback for it. That's kicking off next week. Food waste elimination study was actually completed. It's being presented to council next Monday. So that we're going to be looking, and they've already gotten, off the basis of the draft plan that hasn't been adopted yet, they've already gotten, the nonprofit has gotten a grant to try to pilot some different ways of maybe getting this composting food waste reduction into like multifamily condos and apartments. They're going to be piloting a couple different potential methods. Big belly compactor trash cans are designed for that, and also these in-house mills that reduce it down to smaller amounts. So it's interesting that one's, and that's all grant funded and it's going to be managed by the nonprofit. We're just helping them kind of identify where to put those. Lawrence Tech University collaborations, Make Food Not Waste is working with the dining hall vendors, trying to get the food waste out of LTU reduced. We've assisted graduate student thesis and reviews and presentations. We're advocated for some grant funding for university on their programs, working with their newly formed Environmental Alliance, and ongoing volunteer work with the summer camp and civil engineering perspectives course. So we're very engaged with LTU, both on planning and sustainability as one of our main institutions here in the city center. Education and outreach, we have the reusable grocery bags, which we now have a new version of that we're using out. We're going to get some more bamboo kitchen utensils we've distributed in the past. And we've had articles in the City Southfield Source on sustainability, and our sustainability planner's been working on getting some videos done so they can be messaged on Cable 15. And then we've gotten some certifications this year. Charging Smart Program Bronze designation because of our updated ordinances and policies related to EV chargers and encouraging them and having reasonable rules for them to make it more transparent and easy for people to deploy them and know how to deploy them here. And then we have the Michigan Green Communities Challenge Gold designation, which that was our first year we got all the way to gold. So we looked at all the things we've been doing and trying to do, and it turned out we were ahead of many of our peers, actually. And then the United States Conference of Mayors Climate Protection Award got an honorable mention here for Mayor Siver for the city of Southfield. So the sustainability efforts we're making really are we have actually now get contacted by some of our neighboring communities wanting to know, learn from us. We're actually ahead of the ball on that. How are we doing things? What did we learn? What are our lessons learned? So this is one of the areas that we're kind of a little bit ahead of our peers in this region. And then we did get some grant awards and applications. We wanted to feature this because there's always this question are we applying for grants? Well, yeah, we apply for grants. We're putting in a grant application, I would say, almost every month, as much as we can do it. We got a Droid Institute of Arts Partners in Public Art mural grant that's going to go, the mural's going to go on the ice arena. We just met with them today for the next step of that. That's going to happen this year. We did apply for the Reconnecting Communities grant. We tried to go for the money for the big bridge across the freeways for the 9 Mile Trail, but that was a limited pool of money, and there were a lot of really sophisticated applications from larger cities, and we just didn't make the cut in that round. Unfortunately, it would have been nice, but if you don't ask, if you don't play, you don't win, right? We get our DTE Energy Tree Planting Grant. That's when we apply for most years. We usually get it. It's an extra $4,000 of trees that we plant when we do our tree plantings in the spring. The Keep Michigan Beautiful grant is a small grant, but it's a fairly easy one to get and administer, and we use it, last year we used it to pay for part of the pollinator garden at the butterfly sculpture. So we leverage those dollars into existing projects. We did get a technical assistance award from the Michigan Infrastructure Office. They did a cost-benefit analysis of the 9 Mile pathway that went through all of the various ways in which that was actually a benefit and the kind of benefits it brought. And they said a good project for them typically scores a 1 or a 2. that 9-mile pathway section that we were looking at scored like a 9 when they ran the numbers on it. Like they'd almost never seen a project score that high. That's one of the reasons we think we might have a good shot at that TAP grant for doing that next section, because we have this professionally prepared analysis now that shows the amount of benefit, community benefit that comes from that project. Oakland County Access to Transit Program, that was the award that Alex worked on, that we got $200,000 to do additional benches and trash cans and bus stop improvements on top of the $100,000 we usually do. So we're gonna do like 3 times as much of that in '24. You're working on the bids right now to get that out so that we can get that stuff under construction in the spring. And then the 25 Transportation Alternatives Grant, that's that 9-mile corridor south side from Evergreen to Southfield, that's awarded. That's one we got. So, and that's a big one. That's 80% of the construction costs of that mile of trail. Those are big grant dollars. So the more of those we can get. Many of our bigger trail segments have been built with TAP grants. That's where that pool of money is coming for. And then we get into the staff and training. We go the APA annual conference. Planner Crode usually goes to the national conference every year or every other year. He was at Minneapolis last year. Had a variety of courses on a bunch of different topics. And then we also were looking at many of us sat through the 2024 trend report for planners. I actually just sat through the 2025 one that they just released, or they're just releasing this week. Interesting stuff, because like that highlight slide at the end was 7. The actual trend report has like 100 items. Like it's a substantial trend report. There's a lot of meat in there. Might even be worth it if we had a slow study meeting actually going over that in a little more detail. Michigan Association of Planning, Alex and Sarah went to that this last year. A number of topics covered there, anything from housing, zoning reform, design practice, sustainability. The Michigan Association of Planning Spring Institute, which was on resilience, community resilience. The Michigan Association of Planning Transportation Bonanza was about building communities for health and accessibility, specifically focused on how you plan your transportation system. And then a training on the Michigan Zoning Atlas. There's a pilot for that where they're looking at having an interactive GIS zoning atlas for the whole state, where developers could literally go in and go, where can I build duplexes in this area? And it would actually show you those locations and whether or not there's special approvals or they're by right, if there's any other restrictions. It was interesting. I sat through that one, and Grand Rapids did that because they figured out they had this huge gap between the amount of housing they needed in the next 10, 20 years and the amount of housing they were producing. And the zoning atlas helped them figure out why, what the barriers were to getting there. They're producing, say, 10,000, they were gonna produce 10,000 units over the next 20 years, but they need 50 based on the projections they've got. And they really had to think about where could they focus that and what did they need to do to make that happen. So it has its uses, it's interesting. The International Council of Shopping Centers, Planner Crode goes there with the business development team to talk to potential developers, in his case as the city planner, about our processes and what approvals look like. State of Michigan, we do a variety of training with them, a lot of training with Eagle on sustainability or environmental items, and redevelopment-ready communities. Oakland County, particularly their planning, zoning, and land use, the planners gatherings, they do a variety of focus topics that are known to be kind of high priorities in Oakland County. Once again, workforce development, housing, economic outlook, 9-mile task force. National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, we had our chair attend some training there, and building design and construction. So we do what we have training with the board as well as the staff. We like to list all of that. We get, and what it has been noted in previous presentations to council, that we do a lot of training, but really there's a lot to keep up to date on. You kind of got to start, you do have to pay attention. So we looked at the 25 Planning Commission initiatives. This was discussed with the body a couple of times, and these are the things we're looking at trying to move this year. For housing, zoning amendments, look at those accessory dwelling units and tiny homes, looking at infill housing options and single-family districts, 1 to 4 unit buildings, your duplexes, tris, and quads, and then missing middle housing, which is kind of everything between the large apartment complexes and the quads. We don't, we're a kind of a built-out community. We need to start thinking about how we're going to do infill and redevelopment, not just new development, because we're mostly built out for that first round. Then reuse, redevelopment, more mixed-use options, flexibility in development standards, discretion in development approval process, give more discretion to the council if they're approving something, or to this body if they're approving it, or to the city planner if he's approving it, to be able to maybe, without having to go to the zoning board for a waiver, maybe there's a certain amount of flexibility built into the code that allows the approving site plan approval body to go, yeah, we can approve it with this deviation without going through a whole nother process. Other zoning amendments we're looking at, and we discussed these earlier last year, but I want to circle back to them, is consolidation of similar commercial districts to simplify and streamline the ordinance. As we noted with some of the data analysis I did, there are zoning districts that only have a handful of properties zoned that, and the differences between those districts are very small. It might make sense to just consolidate them into a fewer districts instead of having, I think it's 8 or 9 commercial districts, have like 3 or 4. And make them more flexible so that reuse and redevelopment can happen more organically and not be so process cumbersome. Consolidation of similar residential districts. We did note the single-family districts. We've got 5 of those, actually 6 of those. And most of them, if you look at the schedule of regulations, have almost exactly the same requirements. There's only like 3 really just differences, and they're pretty minor. So that would be another potential option, is like the single-family district could almost collapse from 6 down to 2 or 3 and still serve the same purpose and have really the same rules. But it would simplify the zoning map and make things a little easier, make the code a little more compact and easier to follow for people. Public benefit zoning amendments, that's been under discussion, I guess, for a few years. It's another one of those conversations we want to have with council, because we're not quite sure what they're looking for there, because we've had, what dialogue's been had with that, is it just industrial zones, is it commercial, is it large residential, what are they looking for there, and what kind of benefit analysis are they looking for? That's one of those ones of yeah, we could probably do that, but what does it look like in Southfield? It's still pretty undefined. It's hard to write an ordinance amendment for something that's not, you don't understand what the desired outcome is. So in my case, I don't even know where to start drafting that, because I don't know exactly what it is they want to accomplish. So I think we need to have more dialogue with council to find out what their goals are, and then once we understand the goal, we can maybe figure out if there's a way to do that that fits within the law. Trails, once again, city center trail, additional placemaking and solar lights, 9-mile greenway corridor, let's fill those gaps, and also layer in some trees and benches, some additional improvements. And Rouge River Trail access along the Valley View Trail, I know Planner Code is now in discussions with Oakland County Parks, because they're interested in doing some more projects with us in Southfield after doing, with Beach Woods and some of the other projects they've done to serve the population down here. And that's one that we would really need some assistance to make that happen. It's could be 2 miles of nice nature trail through the Rouge River corridor, but there's freeways you have to get under in a couple of spots, and that really gets engineering intensive, where you got to build some things to make that happen. And that's where the price tag really comes in, is when you interact with those freeways. And if you want to make it ADA accessible, some additional engineering has to happen to get those grades to work. But we had an initial study done by OHM, which sort of scoped what would be needed to do a construction design and what they thought the approximate cost of the project would be. So we're going to start conversations with Oakland County Parks to see if we can get them to partner with us on that. Greenfield Road beautification, phase 2, as we discussed, some additional layering on that 8 to 9 mile, expand up to 10 mile. The dog park at Losser Woods, we want to get that one moved and done. We're going to keep poking Parks and Rec and provide them whatever support they need from us to make that happen. And redevelopment recertification, nearly complete. We've gotten the unofficial approval, but we haven't gotten the official one yet. But now that we have everything in and we have the unofficial approval, that was all due by the end of the year. It was all in by the end of the year, so we should be in good shape. The 7 need to know trends. Are you going to talk about these, Alex?
So the 7 need to know trends, as he mentioned earlier, these are just the 7 highlights out of about 100. As we talked about with the missing middle housing, we have more housing hurdles, insurance costs, as we see in California and in the South from hurricane season. That's going to continue to go up. We're going to continue to see the climate impacts on housing and population migration as that takes effect. Public spaces for dogs, as we just talked about with the expansion of dog parks in the city. People are wanting more of a third place. Instead of what used to be going to the bar as your third place, now they want to go to the dog park to meet with their friends and have their dog child be able to play. As we all know, and again evidenced by the fires in California, that water is precious and it's limited in some areas. We're lucky here, we got 5 freshwater lakes. As that comes into more people's minds, I'm estimating that more people are going to be coming to Michigan in the future. As hybrid and work from home evolves, would we see a post-work world with AI coming more to the mainstream? There has been talk of a 4-day work week for a while. That is gaining some steam. Digital fatigue and pushbacks are setting in. People are putting down their phones, getting away from social media, touching grass, and enjoying life. Fungus is making its 15 minutes of fame. I didn't really touch on this a whole lot, but it's getting more popular. Mushrooms in your food.
Yeah, detoxification of soils. Apparently, fungus can actually digest PFAS and break it down into safe stuff. So they're finding fungus may be a good way to do environmental remediation. It's getting into various foodstuffs, and they're even looking at ways to use the fibers to do construction materials and to make biofuels. So and fungus is literally everywhere. It's one of those things that's in every ecosystem, and in way more abundance than most people realize. There's almost, because it's a decomposer, almost anything where there are other living things, there are funguses part of the decomposition cycle. So it's an interesting and robust group of, not really plants exactly, because they're not photosynthetic. They're fungus, they're their own thing. But yeah, that one is an interesting one. Now, on the dog space one, I would note one of the big things there, they actually showed, we were watching the presentation, that the table of number of household with pets has been going up, and the number of households with children has been going down. Yeah. And I think a year or two ago it crossed, and now there are more households with pets than there are households with children. So it's really kind of and that trend doesn't look like it's it's not flattening out. It's pretty much doing this. It's gonna continue for a while. We actually have a project come in next month for a dog bar, a bar that has a dog park kind of built into it. There's one in Detroit. It's called Barkside, if you want to look it up online, but they want to open one in Southfield. So that should be interesting. Yeah. It's a special land use because it's a bar, but it's basically a bar with a dog park attached to it. It's an interesting concept. I think it might be pretty popular. Apparently they do really well in Detroit. And then the last item is that, pretty obvious, balancing green energy demand with indigenous rights. You hear it with the pipeline stuff. Also, a lot of the green energy systems in our electronics require mining rare earth elements, and that kind of mining is kind of destructive, and the demand has gone up. They're slating the demand is going to go up at least 30% in the next decade for those rare earth elements, and that's after going up 10% just in the last 10 years. So it's pretty big. They're looking for all the rare earth elements that go into our modern electronics. And additionally, I heard mentioned that the coming back of nuclear power is putting another demand on uranium, which I hadn't really thought about. And even copper is another one that they're looking for sources on that again, because there's so much usage of it. So I think we're looking at between the inputs into green energy, like solar panels and whatnot, and then also, just the way you move that energy around across the native lands is, one of those issues that perennially comes up. So it's likely to be more of a flashpoint going forward. We are looking today for a resolution approving the report and then referring it to the city council if it's acceptable in the form that we've presented it. And then I can take it and present it to council on the 10th. In their case, it's mostly a receive and file because this is your report, so you actually don't make a recommendation on adoption, you act on it. It's the planning commission's report that then you refer to council.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion on the report, Commissioner Martin?
I'd like to report. I think it's very good. The full presentation, the way that it was sent out in the thing was very important, and I thought it was very good. I have questions, but they're not related to the report. They're information in the report that,
Raise questions?
yeah, the
Made you go,
questions. But I think the report's good. I think it's worthy and very good, and I think it should be sent on to the city council.
Commissioner Willis?
Following Commissioner Martin's statement, I agree wholeheartedly. And again, kudos on the report.
Absolutely.
Ditto.
Thanks.
Yeah, excellent report. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, very good job. That's good. I guess the projects keep getting bigger and bigger over the years. There's actually things that are done, so you got momentum now of art and trails, and it's kind of hard to convince somebody to put out public art or pay for a trail, 13, 14 years ago, but now it's a pretty robust system that's.
Yeah, we don't even get much pushback on the art requirement anymore.
No?
Like because they can see it. They
Yeah.
can see it's a thing,
It's everywhere.
that they're not the
It's cool.
first person, It's interesting because either they're like, oh yeah, we'd like to do that. That'd make our place really stand out. Or they're like, no, I get it. Yeah, we'll just contribute to the art fund. We don't really want to do it on our site, but we're fine with throwing our art fund money in.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, art gets put in.
Yeah, it's great. Nice job. Commissioner Martin?
I do have one other thought. I don't remember the development costs for the Northland project,
Oh, yeah.
but I think that is something we should always be able to report of what our major goals are, the development costs for Northland. I know we've come up, and we've had, with Middle Point, we come up with large project
Yeah.
development costs, but I think we need to hang that star out there with Northland.
Yeah, we got a
each and every
meeting
year.
on that this Friday. I could ask to see if anybody's got updated numbers, because if I look back at the original application from the first ODD, it's gonna be dated.
Yeah,
I mean, I could reference that, but I talk to the developer somewhat regularly, dealing with his stuff, so if he's got an updated, number that he's telling funders or loan people or whatever he's using in his pro formas, maybe I can get kind of an updated scope and scale, because obviously the project's been going long enough that inflation has obviously affected the number.
yeah. Just my thought is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's such a big number that you have there to show, we're still working to get there again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's all. But I think it's an excellent report.
To that point, I was talking to the DDA director today, and the DDA now is actually like collecting tax capture again because the Costco went in. Like they were underwater for a while.
Yeah.
But now there's enough taxable values from the original base when they established the DDA that they're actually collecting an increment now because of Costco. It's not a ton of money, but like it's finally they're in positive territory.
Yeah.
And as those two buildings on Greenfield come online and get occupied, that'll bring them further, and then they'll be able to do more. I mean, they're working on a strategic plan, the DDA right now, to try to update that, because the last one they did was it was the 2013 to 2015, I think, or 2018. So it hasn't been updated in a little while. So they're updating that and looking at, what they can do short-term with the resources they have, but longer-term as more resources become available. So that's a good initiative on their part, because there's some areas like along 8 Mile that are part of the DDA, like between Southfield and Northwestern, that stretch of kind of little office buildings along 8 Mile is part of the DDA, but it's really not doing anything. And there's some discussion about what we can do to maybe jumpstart that area a little bit. So, yeah, no, I think you're right. There's progress there. Like the fact that the DDA went cash positive this year, to me, that's a huge, that's a tipping point. So, and I think the Costco's adding momentum in that area. So, yeah, no, absolutely. I'll see what I can dig up on the Northland stuff.
There's no further discussion. We're looking for a motion to adopt and refer the annual report to city council.
I'd like to make that motion.
All right.
Second.
Favorable motion by Commissioner Bernuti, second by Commissioner Martin. All in favor? Aye. All right. That proceeds on to city council. Meeting minutes from December 4th and December 18th.
Motion to approve the, I just lost the page. The minutes for, the study meeting minutes for December 4th and regular meeting minutes for December 8th.
Support.
18th.
Support.
All right, we've got a favorable motion on the minutes by Commissioner Martin, supported by Commissioner Willis. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes proceed. Now we have the public comment portion of the meeting. Any members of the public wish to speak, please come forward. State your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Name is Garland McWilliams. Live on Pennsylvania Street off of Greenfield. And my concern was, and you kind of brushed on it a little bit, in fact, I have 2 things I want to bring up. The Northland project. You know, I drive by there, you know, quite often and everything, and it's been going on for a few years now. And I was wondering, when is that going to be completed? You know, I mean, it's been a long time. You know, I don't have any other place to shop anymore. I got to go to another city to shop and everything. And when Northland was there, I really appreciated, you know, the convenience of going to Northland. And I see a lot of other projects that are going on in the city, and that's commendable. But I'd just like to know when it's going to get done. Next thing I want to talk about, bring up, is the theaters on 12 Mile and Telegraph there. What's going to become of those? They've been vacant for a number of years now, and I haven't heard anything about it. I used to go to the theater, had someplace to go to, you know, and now I got to go to some other city to see a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do have some info on that. Any other questions while you're here? And we'll let the planning department give you some better dates than I can remember. I know Northland is a big one.
Yeah, I mean, that technically for full build out for all the phases of Northland, you could be talking another decade or 2. The 2 buildings on Greenfield that are under construction are supposed to be completed and beginning occupancy this year. So those 2 will be done, and then they're supposed to commence construction on the next 2 buildings along Greenfield also this year. So ideally, the 4 buildings along Greenfield, which will have commercial on the ground floor and then apartments above, within the next few years, those will be complete and occupied. Hopefully, the first 2 buildings will be complete and occupied by the end of this year, and the second 2 buildings by the end of next year. And then there's like the big center building where the mall used to be. That's another phase. It's a multi-phase project. So that one, and there's buildings that go behind the Greenfield buildings as well. My understanding is, just because of the scale of the project being built in phases, I would be surprised if as a whole, completely done, developers out of there, less than 10 years, just because it is such a huge project. And you gotta remember, like, that project kicked off, and then the pandemic happened. And then the supply chain problems happened. And it kind of derailed the thing for a couple of years. So it's moving along. We're gonna have those first couple of buildings open and occupied this year, if all continues to go. But it's in the Costco. The thing about Costco is that Costco came in with their own general contractor and built that Costco. The developer sold them that piece, and the Costco guys built that themselves. So that was a completely different entity that built that. And Costco is like a global corporation. They've got fast track contractors who literally just work for them. That they go, like the general contractor who ran Costco, he travels from place to place building Costcos. He just goes, like, wherever Costco sends him, he goes and builds a Costco. That's all he does. He just builds Costcos. So that's kind of what Costco can do. When you're a Costco, you can do that. You're like one of the biggest corporations doing retail. But yeah, that's probably that. It's a huge project, so it's going to take a few years to get built out. The theaters, the one on 12 Mile, that's the one that was bought by, I think, the Triumph Church.
The AMC, yeah.
Yeah, and that one, for a while, they were trying to stick tenants in there, but without doing any of the stuff to fix the building. Now it sounds like they might be trying to sell it. If they sell it, then maybe somebody would do something with it, but the church was just gonna make it into a church, but like they haven't done, they bought it and just sat on it. They haven't done anything with it.
They did buy it?
They did buy it, oh yeah, they bought it a few years back. That's why it's been sitting vacant like that, is because it was not on the market anymore. The church bought it and then they just sat on it. And I don't know what their thinking is, if they were storing, if they were parking money there, if they thought they were gonna do another church there, I don't really know. I don't know what their thoughts were. They don't tell us what their business plan is. They just go buy property, then we find out when they file their property transfer affidavit that they bought it. So, and we can't stop them from buying it. That's a free trade between two private entities.
Yeah.
If AMC was willing to sell it to them and they were willing to pay the price, and we can't force them to occupy it, we can't force them to sell it. We can only force them to do property maintenance. That's all we can force them to do. So, yes, would we like to see another theater or a redevelopment? Like, if it's not gonna be a theater, knock it down. That's a lot of land, like valuable land in a really high visibility location that could be something. So, we have encouraged all the parties involved, like, yes, we'd support a theater, we'd also support redevelopment of the property to something new for Southfield. Retail, maybe a theater and retail, maybe it could be a Dave and Buster's, I don't know, something. Build something there, but once again, we don't control the property, so there's only so much we can do with that, other than make them do property maintenance, it's a code enforcement.
And there's no kind of pressure we can put on people?
Well, because they're not occupying it as a church, we have not given them tax exempt status, so they've had to pay taxes on the property. So when we do go out there, code enforcement goes out there and make them clean the landscaping, remove the litter, remove dumping on the property. That's all legally we can do, is make them do property maintenance and pay their taxes.
And with Northland, it's going to be something like 10 years?
Yeah, Northland's huge. There's like 300 acres there.
I know, but didn't they realize that when they started?
Yeah, no, it was always a multi-phase plan that could take up to 2 decades. It was always a multi-phase plan that could take up to 20 years. The market can't actually absorb that much stuff that fast. You have to bring it on at a pace. If you try to dump 3,000 apartments in the market at once, it can't absorb it. But if you add a few hundred apartments every year, the market can absorb it. Nobody will finance you to do all that at once because the market can't absorb it. There's no way your pro formas work. The banks won't finance it that way. They'll finance it in phases, but there's no way they'd finance the whole thing over 20 years. So yeah, it always had to be built in phases, a building at a time.
So I'm going on 80 years old, and so by the time I'm going on 90,
Yeah, unfortunately, regional malls are dying. Where I live in Dearborn, Fairlane Mall is dying. At the Higher Regency, there's already vacant.
And the one in Pontiac?
You
Yeah.
have to look
That one?
at places like Pontiac, that's been vacant for 10 years.
Yeah.
And there's nothing there.
And the studies that I've seen actually indicate
Hall
we're,
Road is going, they're getting rid of the mall there. They're
Yeah.
getting rid of large malls all over, and everybody's trying to redevelop it. The day of the large market stores is dying.
Oh, yeah.
They're all going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
online
for
and
sure.
all
All
that.
over the country, not just here.
oh no, it's everywhere.
And-
We're over-retailed in America. Like, if you look at Europe, we have per person 4 times the retail square footage that Europe has. So we have way more retail space than we actually can support in the long run. We overbuilt. And this adjustment combined with online shopping is this is the adjustment that's happening. You see it in this, you see it in office space too. Office space is now even though people have returned to work now, they're not returned to work all the time. It's flex now. So even then they don't need quite as much square footage as they used to. So, we've got a lot of adjustment to do, and it's not just us, it's happening all over the country. It's the same thing with a lot of older churches now. They're looking for new purposes because a lot of older parishes or older congregations have shrunk to the point where they can't support the building. And in my career, I've been at this over 20 years, I've probably dealt with a church conversion or a church going vacant every year of my career, because just the declining numbers of people who are active parishioners of that church. Now, some places, some groups, some of the bigger congregations have active like committees and plans to consolidate and repurpose properties. Other ones, it just kind of happens in a disorganized way. So unfortunately, yeah, it's just like you're seeing it with the banks. I end up with a lot of vacant banks because banks are going more online. You're seeing it with the Rite Aids and CVSs and Walgreens. They're contracting because they overbuilt. They built way too many of them. So yeah, it's just I think we're going to see it with the dollar stores. I think the dollar stores are overbuilding, and I think we're already seeing mergers in that industry, and we're going to see retraction eventually.
Well, you know, what bothered me was it was such a rush to tear it down. They had all these plans and everything, and I said, oh, boy, that's going to be a nice deal, you know. And they tore everything down, and it just sat there.
Yeah, some of that is.
The apartments are there, you know,
Yeah.
that's fine and everything, but, you know, it was such a rush to tear everything down, but nothing's been done with it.
Well, it would have just sat and rotted because we didn't have anybody to occupy it. So, and also tearing it down, okay, this is a little arcane economic development stuff. One of the ways you fund these projects is through a brownfield plan. The way you get a brownfield plan is tax capture on the improvements on the property with the new development. The way you get the most tax capture is if you actually start with the lowest assessed value at the beginning, which is usually like when the building's completely empty or been demolished, because you're just at land value then. So the project in the long run, there was no way we were going to reuse the stuff that was torn down. It was in too bad a shape, and there was no way to repurpose it. It had to come down. So that was just to make room for the development to occur. But, you know, yes, we could have still left buildings there, but they would have just been derelict buildings with roofs that were leaking and full of water and rodents. It wouldn't have done the community any good to keep those buildings.
Well,
So,
that answers my question.
To answer your question,
Got one more thing. It's always been my pet peeve.
Sure.
I know my 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
Not a long line by.
It's okay.
Hey, 3 minutes starting now.
Divided attention.
3 minutes starting now.
You know, I've been to city council meetings and everything, and I always brought up the issue of the condition of some of our roads. And, you know, I live a block off of Mount Vernon, and it's in pretty bad shape. And I understand the west side of Southfield is going to have some work done on it next year. Mount Vernon and Lincoln's is in horrible shape, you know. And, you know, every time I ask about it, they say, we don't have any money. They can't get any money. You know, it just seems like there is no will. When there's a will, you can find some money from someplace, you know. But, you know, I just wanted to bring that up. And, you know, I talked to my neighbors, and they say they call, and they say, well, we seem to be getting a runaround and everything, and, you know, and not enough transparency with the, you know, look at, there's nobody else here, you know, and everything. You know, I try to be involved with, you know, my neighborhood and city affairs as much as I can and everything. Yeah. And, you know, I retired from Ford Engineering. And, you know, I moved to Southfield. I've been here for 25, 26, 27 years now. And neighborhoods change and everything, and for the most part, for the better. I got a few things I complained to a couple of neighbors in a nice way and everything, and they cooperate and everything. But I just want to see the Southfield that I moved into to progress comfortably, and I need some place to shop, okay? And, you know, that's about all I got. That's about all I got.
If I could respond, I need to say I appreciate you, I appreciate your questions. We have had exactly the same conversations over the last couple of months. Northland, we've talked about the number of times it's been before us. And we even compared the church at 12 Mile and Northwestern to the church that's at Southfield, it's Woodward and 7 Mile, because both of them have been long-term projects. We share the frustration. I think we're here because we want to make sure we can push those same things. So I'm glad to hear from you, because it just kind of reinforces our commitment to the same thing. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you for
Well,
coming.
thanks for listening.
Anytime.
The other thing I would add, in terms when it comes to roads, what we're going to be addressing next month at the meeting in the middle of the month is the capital improvement program, where we talk about capital projects, which include infrastructure like roads, and then that feeds right into the budget. And that's really where the rubber hits the road. If it's not in the capital improvement plan, then it can't go in the budget. And then, that's kind of how that money stacks through. And one of the things people don't seem to understand, by law, local governments have to have balanced books. Every year, you've got to balance your books. You cannot spend more money than you have. And you have to send reports that prove you have balanced books to the state, or you end up in receivership like Flint and Detroit did. So it is tough. There is a limited pool of money. Michigan's finance system for local government is kind of broken. There's some good articles out there about what the problem is. Between the Headley Amendment and Proposal A that were passed back in the 90s under Engler, it broke how local government was financed, and all local governments have kind of been in trouble since then. And then when all the property values dropped during the Great Recession, because Proposal A and the Headley Amendment assumed the property values would never drop, that they would always go up. And then when they dropped 40%, that put everybody, I think right now the finance department, the city administrator estimate that we will catch up to where we were at the beginning of the Great Recession in terms of revenues in perhaps another 20 years. That's how much revenue went down, and our revenue increase is capped at, I think it's 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. That is the maximum amount our taxable value can go up. So with those caps in place, when you drop 40%, to recover at, say, 3% a year, it takes a long time to actually get back up to that level. So unfortunately, we took a huge hit. All local government did, not just here. All local government took this huge hit in their tax base and their revenues in the Great Recession when it happened, and then none of them have recovered completely yet. So it's unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in a bad system and things actually, local government finance worked kind of okay before Prop A and the Headley Amendment were passed. They actually functioned, because local voters could vote to tax themselves. If we want more stuff and we want better roads, we, as all local voters, we could say, you know what, we're willing to pay another mill if you fix these roads. We can't do that anymore. We're capped. We cannot do that locally. There's limits now on that. So yeah, unfortunately, state of Michigan kind of took a lot of I would say, the rights of the local people to decide how much taxes they wanted to pay in for what. They took that out of your hands and out of the hands of your local government at the Lansing level. So it's one of those things, if it doesn't change, it's going to lead to a lot more of this kind of deferred infrastructure work, because it's happening everywhere. It's like I said, I've worked in other communities, and it's not just here, it's everywhere. All of the local governments in Michigan are fighting the same problem. And the state legislatures basically just they don't want to address it. It doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. I've seen it go back and forth, and it gets raised every legislative session, and they never address it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see, Pierce was one of my streets I brought up, and they did blacktop Pierce between Mount Vernon and 10 Mile. So that was a great help, because
That one was really bad.
It was.
The potholes in
it
that
was
street
bad.
were insane. They
Yeah.
eat your car.
Yeah,
It was
so-
bad. It was bad.
There's plans to do Mount Vernon this summer.
What's that?
Mount Vernon between Southfield and Expressway. They're working on redoing resurfacing that.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yeah, that section, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Like I said, to really understand the details of it, the capital improvement program and the budget are really where the details, where the rubber hits the road on that stuff. And I can tell you, our city engineer goes after all the grant money she can get for roads, but there's different categories of roads, and certain types of roads qualify for some grants, they don't apply for other grants. So it's unfortunately, and there's a lot of competition. Every local government is after this money. and there's just never enough of it to go around for the amount of roads we have. We have a lot of roads. I mean, we've got 200 and something miles of roads in Southfield. So, yeah, it's challenging. You're correct. Like, it's very challenging. Absolutely. But I would say that if you get a little deeper in, like, if you wanted to come to the capital improvement, the meeting that's on the 13th? That's right here, yeah. February 12th, sorry, at 3 p.m. That meeting is where all of the departments actually present to this body their capital plan and what they intend to do and why they chose the projects they chose. So that one's like where they really get into the detail. Every single department comes and presents at that meeting who has capital projects. You learn a ton from that capital improvement program. I learn a ton from that because I don't even know what all the departments are up to until they present for capital improvements. Then I'm like, oh, libraries is there, public works is there, planning's there, all the departments,
All the departments.
IT,
Police,
fire department, police department, they're all there with their capital projects. So you learn a lot about like, not only what they're gonna do next year, but it's the capital improvement plan is current year plus 5. So you learn what they're planning to do the next 5 years.
And you might even see on there when they plan to do your street, because I remember that, they
Yeah, they
laid
had
it
a-
out
yeah,
for
they had
5
a-
years.
Now, they do get updated. We update it every year, but like having that forward look where you see like, oh, okay, they're doing this one, then they're doing this one, then they're doing this one. It gives you that sense of like what the actual plan is for the next 5
Well,
years.
they did some work on my block. It was, brought the attention of some of the areas that, I mean, you'd have to drive around
Yeah.
certain of those spots. And they did about 3 or 4 areas on my block that were really, really bad. And that was very appreciated. In fact, one of my neighbors said, wanted to give me a hug and gave me a gift card. I said, okay, you didn't see that. But people get tired of seeing nothing. And they get, a lot of my neighbors are retirees like myself, and they don't have the energy to come to the meetings and everything. And they say, well, whatever, they're just going to do what they want to do, and that gives a bad name for the councils and city government.
But the one thing people don't understand is that, yes, city government, but businesses do the building, the development, the buying. We can't force them to do that. We can only try and work with what they plan to do.
Yeah.
And the money that they have, because we don't have it, we don't control it.
Gotcha.
But it's, hey, it's a dog-eat-dog world, and we're always on
yeah.
the bitten end.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, but well, hopefully things will get a lot better.
Yeah.
And like I say, I try to come to as many meetings as I can just to see what's going on.
Sure.
I'm not a chronic complaint. Some people just are chronic complainers. But
What's important?
I gotta know what's going on.
Yeah, that capital improvement plan meeting on the 12th, man, there's just a lot of really good information that's presented at that.
Okay, I'll try to make
If you
that.
can make it that one, you'll learn a ton about what they're planning next year and for the next 5 years.
This is way off the conversation we're having now, but there are always openings for boards and commissions. They're always looking for people who want to be involved in things that goes on with the city. So it's an application process. It's simple to do, and you could join a board. All of us are,
Right, volunteer.
yeah, we're all kind of volunteers,
Right.
and so they have it for virtually every area. So it would be a thing to consider.
Well,
Right.
I got a little
Don't give up.
age on my side. You know what I mean?
So
We can all raise our
I
hands.
got a plate that's running over. I need a couple of clones for myself and everything, but I try to do the best I can. But thanks for the information.
Appreciate your comment.
I appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
Take care, be well.
Okay.
Listen,
you too.
try to go to that meeting.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Close the public hearing, but
All right.
we never have any public comments.
I know.
Sometimes we can run over, or we rarely.
Council updates.
Council update.
Council items update.
Yeah, so the oil change place on Southfield between Stratford and Silver Maple went to council for its rezoning special land use, and The rezoning did not pass. Mr. Cruz was missing, and they deadlocked 3-3. So it failed to pass because they didn't have a majority vote for the rezoning. Some of the neighbors finally came out against, like 2 households came out against the oil change place. And then a couple of the other people who were always at the city council meeting also spoke against it. And for some reason, it broke 3-3 on that. So,
Was that the council meeting? Yeah.
yeah, that one, we're looking at like, first off, since they actually didn't pass a resolution for or against, they just deadlocked 3-3.
Okay.
Technically, the issue's not final. Like,
Right.
so it doesn't preclude them from bringing it back, but we don't know, Councilman Cruz is not well. I do not know when he will be at a council meeting. He's been having some health issues. I don't know the details, but
It's been true for years.
Yeah.
I don't know when he's going to be there or not there, so you really can't count on that. I, got a little bit of feedback from some of the council members kind of off the record as to what they were concerned about. So with some changes, the other thing is I suggested, well, and then the city attorney's reviewing this to whether or not they can bring it back as is, or they have to bring back sort of a different proposal. My thought is they could actually come back and propose like a conditional rezoning in the B3, exclude some uses, maybe tweak the site plan a little bit, and then take another crack at it. I did tell the owner, I said, you could probably do that and it would be legal because you're not asking for the exact same thing. But that doesn't guarantee you're going to get another vote. You'll get a vote, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't guarantee you're going to get a majority. You might have the same result. I can't guarantee how council's going to vote. I always tell people, council doesn't work for me. I work for them. So it's tough because he did like everything we asked him to do on those plans pretty
Ideal
much.
location.
And he went through, he came to council kind of like before he bought, then he acquired the property, then he went through the process, and I'm like,
How
Yeah.
does that work when it's tied like that?
well, a rezoning, to change the zoning, you have to have a majority vote. So with 6 people there, you needed at least 4.
Yeah, it needs to
Because
be
3-3 like just leaves it as is. The resolution to approve the rezoning failed for lack of a majority. Just like when
Just
you guys
like
voted
this.
on Eagle, same thing. You guys locked 3-3
Right.
and nothing passed. So in your case, you decided to postpone it for them to address the concerns that were stated and maybe to have a 7th member present when you voted. Council just kind of like,
didn't want
we don't have the votes, issue dies for lack of
Oh, my gosh.
lack of support, and they moved on.
That's too bad.
Like I said, the city attorney's reviewing, like, there is some case law out there about like when a zoning issue is considered final and like, because you don't want to get into a double jeopardy thing where you're going back and asking for the same thing 3 times and holding 3 public hearings on the exact same thing, because that's not fair to like anyone involved in the process, including the neighbors. Like, they came, they voiced their opinion, the thing happened, and then you're going to come back and do it again. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that there is a degree of finality to those decisions, and they have to change something to bring it back, or it's because there was not a majority vote, denial or approval, that it's still an open issue. Like, they never effectively acted on it. They made a motion in support, but there were not enough votes to approve or deny. They deadlocked. So that one we're still working out. But I'm working with Dawn to see if there is, but like even if Dawn and I can figure out a legitimate way that it can come back, that doesn't
Yeah.
guarantee approval. That just guarantees them another round. So I don't know on that one. Even the mayor spoke up kind of in favor. He's like, that's been vacant for years. It was approved for an office building in 2002 and nothing got built.
Yeah.
There's a lot of underutilized and older buildings on that strip that really need to be repurposed. I'm personally of the opinion the OS district is too narrow of a district. We're never going to get reinvestment in those buildings and reuse unless we allow more flexible use of those buildings. At least service uses, in addition to the office uses, or maybe specialty retail, could also go in those buildings. They're probably suitable for that. Not assembly, they just have enough parking, but I just think like if we took like the OS district and combined it with like the B1 and the NS, the neighborhood service district, like that mix of lower intensity commercial uses could work in any of those buildings. So, that's one of the things that looking at it convinced me like, the OS district in these small office building corridors isn't working for us. We're not getting the investment. The buildings are just sitting, or they're going through the spiral. They're spiraling down. like, what we need to do is have enough flexibility that someone sees that they can make the return on the building with tenants, and then they'll come in and invest in the building. So I really am of the opinion that as part of that consolidating commercial districts we were talking about, consolidating the OS with the less intense commercial districts might be a good way to do that. But unfortunately, for that guy, you know, like, we had all those meetings, and they showed up, these two neighbors showed up for the last meeting out of the 4 meetings that were held. So I don't, and some of the concerns they had about like air pollution were like, well, that's coming from the highways.
Yeah.
Southfield, Northwestern,
You
like,
live next to a big.
that's where your air
Yeah.
pollution's coming from, not from the oil change place.
Right, they didn't come.
And then there was some concern about the traffic, but we're like, it's a highway with 7 lanes.
That argument, that's why people want to build on the
Yeah,
main road.
but also the guy said, like,
Telegraphs or
on a
Southfield.
busy day, they do 35 cars
Right,
in a 10-hour, 8 to 10 hour period.
yeah.
That's, 2, 3, 4 cars an hour. That's not a substantial traffic impact.
No.
I'm like, they were wondering why we didn't make them do a traffic study. I'm like, if you're only generating 4 cars an hour, there's no justification for the cost of a traffic study.
No.
I can't justify making a guy like this spend $10,000 on a traffic study when he's got such a low traffic generator. It's just one of those things that was a little strange.
That was the perfect design for that site.
No, it fit
I don't know what else
nicely.
you could build there.
We're getting the sidewalks, we're getting the green belts, we're getting the screening wall. Building looked decent,
Yeah.
It was a relatively low intensity use. I don't think they quite appreciate that. That's actually a relatively low intensity use.
4 cars an hour.
So I'm still working on that. We'll see what happens with it. I don't think the issue's done. I just don't know what the next chapter's gonna look like yet. I gotta talk to the city attorney again about our options. My own figure is the cleanest way to do it is just have them come back with a conditional rezoning, go through the process again with a conditional rezoning, have them tweak the site plan a little bit based on some of the comments I heard that were more of the legitimate variety, and see if maybe that's enough to flip one vote, and they would then pass.
There's always the trick, the plan commissioners show up and speak too.
Yeah.
That always helps.
Yeah, I mean, even the mayor chimed in, and he doesn't do that on very many of these. Like, he normally leaves that to the council to decide, but he actually did chime in on that one, so, yeah. So that was a little
Not
disappointing.
everyone's gonna build a $50 million development. Gotta take your singles, singles
Yeah.
and doubles
Hey,
here.
this is a family operation. The gentleman was like, the building, he's like, yeah, this was the first, he said, I was gonna build this and turn it over to my son to run. And it would stay in the family. And I'm like going, yeah, I know how this works. I dealt with the Arab American community in Dearborn. That's how they build generational wealth. That's how they do it. And I'm like, and a lot of, like minorities do that. That's how they do it. It's like one buddy started a business. They built the second one. They turned it over to the kid to run because they trust a family member to run it. And then it builds up over time. And I'm just like, you gotta stop thinking that it's all about the big corporations. We need these small investors. We need that guy on Bush Street who's gonna do the 6 condos. We need this guy who's gonna build the little oil change on these pieces of property that we have left. We need these people. We need them to come. They're willing to do a smaller project because they're not looking to turn a profit in 5 years. They're looking to turn a profit like generationally. So they'll make an investment if they think it's gonna pay off for their family over that longer time period. And that's, a lot of that small business, that's how that operates. Their return on investment isn't 5 years, it's 10, 15, 20 years maybe. But it's growing. It's also employment for family members and stuff too. Like, it's all, I came up in a family business, I know how this works. So, hopefully we can move the ball on that one. It was an interesting, the things that were discussed as part of that were interesting. Then just talking about next month's meetings, and this is our last item. We got a meeting next Wednesday, a study meeting. We have 4 development projects that'll be coming in front of you, a couple special land use site plans and a couple of just site plans. So that's ramping up. On the 12th at 3 p.m., that's that day meeting, that's the CIP meeting where all the departments present. And then at the end of the month, we'll be bringing back the items from the beginning, the 4 development, when they had their public hearings and for the special land uses, and to have approvals for the site plans and then referrals to council for the special land uses. So, we've got I'd say a fairly full agenda for February. And then in March, just to look ahead to March, in March, we've got another 4 or 5 developments queued up to come in March already. And then the CIP will come back at the end of March for an actual final recommendation to council on that agenda. So we're probably not going to get into these other like zoning update. I'm working on some drafts and things, but like additional zoning amendments and things will probably not really be coming out in front of you until April. Once we clear the CIP annual report, development backlog, we'll move into some of these longer term goals. Because we want to look at the tree ordinance, I want to look at these commercial districts. There's a few things that I'd like to bring forward that I think would be helpful for the way the system runs and also helpful for our reuse, redevelopment, tax-based growth situation. I will say, one of the things when that 24-412 was up, Councilwoman Hogue gave a very nice, like, because she voted in favor. She gave a nice, like, look, if we want to build a community pool, if we want to have these nice things in the community, we need to be growing the tax base. That's where the money comes to pay for these things. And I'm like, I always feel refreshed when somebody will say that at a meeting on camera. And Councilwoman Hogue, I think, did a nice job of explaining that. And like, look, we can't say no to everything. That's what, she's like, we really cannot be saying no to everything. You know, that can't be the approach we're going to take if we're going to thrive. So I appreciate that somebody, you know, actually like went on the record and said that. That was, I thought, helpful, at least that it got said.
I have a question for you, in that at the city council meetings and even at our meetings, there's a lady that comes in. She's here for her neighborhood in Southfield. She's at Farmington Hills in her neighborhood, and she's in Livonia for her neighborhood. She's hit this on TV for these. She's hell-bent on sheets in Livonia and Farmington, and she's anything in Southfield. How can she speak for each and every community like that?
Well, two things. One, when you have a public meeting, they don't have to be a resident to speak. Any member of the public can come and address a public meeting during the public comment period.
She uses the Southfield address.
They have a right to do that. And under First Amendment, they can say, they can assert.
She's a post office box.
They can assert they represent whoever they want to assert they represent, but you should always take those with skepticism.
Yeah.
Like even when like a president of a neighborhood association comes to speak on behalf of their association, their board should have passed a resolution sending them to speak on behalf of the association. Otherwise, they're just speaking for themselves. They just happen to be the president of the association. You know, that was one of those things where I've dealt with that in the past, where someone asserts they're speaking on behalf of the association. When I contact the board of the association, they're like, no, we didn't send them. They were speaking on their own behalf. You know, like, which is fine, they can. They're also a private citizen who can speak, right? But I always take, you got to take those assertions with a grain of salt. And I think council does to a degree, but they have a right to speak. That's, you know, Michigan law, the Open Meetings Act, and the First Amendment, you really, you know, if you're not disrupting the meeting, you have a right to speak.
But she disrupts because she starts the hand clapping and the amen and all this other crap always.
Yeah, and the council president does rein that in, or tries to as best he can. I think having an officer at those meetings also helps keep it from getting too far. So having a police officer at those meetings also helps from
She
getting
has
too.
been put out of meetings.
But yeah, it's unfortunate, but that is just the nature of Michigan's Open Meetings Act. You know, they have a right to speak, and they don't have to be a resident of the city. You know, any member of the public at an open meeting.
That's enough for this meeting. Yeah. This meeting is adjourned at 7:50.